では時間になりましたのでセッションを始めたいと思います。Zuzi, it's start time.
Now it should work. And for the translators as well? Yeah, okay. Well, then we can start. So I'm so glad it works. And I am so glad to see all of you here. That's unbelievable. So late night, almost time to sleep, and you're still here. So we have this unique chance today to win. Hey, it doesn't work? No? Yeah. To win one of those books in Japanese. I just received a box with them. So if you can read Japanese, actually, not those of you who cannot, but those of you who can, right? You can get some of those, of course, with a signature if you want. So the first one was the black gray one, and that's for Scrum Masters. So I wrote it because I thought I'm sharing some experience which is useful for Scrum Masters at my classes, but I can only teach that many people in my life, even if I teach my entire workday, weekends, holiday, and everything. So I thought, like, what should I do? How can I spread the message around? So I wrote that book. So hopefully you found it useful, or you will. Like the first one, about the leadership, because at the end of the day, what's of a good Agile is the leadership or the lack of leadership. So I want to start with, I need to learn how to use this. Okay, I need to start with my journey. So when I started, my first experience with Agile was very individual culture. No teams, no collaboration, cubicles, typical American corporation. Like that size, I could see when I stand up, I could see across the cubicles around me, people with like no connection to my work. But every week I meet my colleagues for an hour for a status meeting. So great. I feel lonely. And then out of nowhere, like this, they switch to Scrum. They say, oh, you, and you, random people, of course, my old colleagues, you're going to be sitting here in the meeting room, and you're going to be collaborating, pair programming. So as you just realized, we only have half of a number of computers than we have the number of people here. So you're going to be really pair working. You still have your cubicle out there. You can read your emails there if you want to, but you're expected to be most of your time here. And by the way, if you have a daily Scrum every day and we have a retrospective, and you might guess how I take it as a new tool, new process, new t-shirt with a new logo. Not much, crazy stuff. And then I come back to Prague where I live. That's how to use it. The Prague where I live, and I started implementing it because they asked me, now you have to be a Scrum Master. And I was like, I don't want to be a Scrum Master. And my manager, he said like, yeah, but you have to, right? You're the only one who ever seen Scrum from our company, 2005, long time ago. It's okay. I don't like Scrum. He was like, yeah, I don't like it either. So you just started. So I did. Implementing, follow the process, implement the tools exactly this way, right? Because we didn't even read a Scrum guide at that time, but some internal process from that company was saying so. I was trying to do my best. I make a deal with my manager that I'm only going to be a Scrum Master for a very short period of time, 3 months. And then I go back to coding. Apparently, I realize it's fun. So I stopped coding, start dealing with people, and start slowly by slowly realizing, what is this journey really about? So mindset change, different way of thinking, different way of doing things. Very different from what I thought originally. But I realized it's fun. It was engaging. It was working with people. Really good. And I became step by step better in it. Of course, I did all the mistakes you can ever imagine. All those nice birds and talking about something. I guess I was there at the beginning. Not proud of it, especially, but I did my best. I tried. And only after a couple of years, I guess, I started being agile and I started really living that and realizing like, what is this shift truly about? And feel confident to help some other companies. So this talk is a collection of stories from different organizations, different teams, and the mistakes we did collectively or they did, and I was unable to prevent it anyway. Because the fact that you know how it should be, well, that's a good starting point. But now can you help others to see it? That's a very different thing. So the whole thing is organized around 5 segments. The first one, engaged culture. It's all about the culture. It's all about the people. It's so difficult to explain. So imagine telco company. They got single discipline skills departments, detailed position descriptions, individual performance set in place, no collaboration, no teams. Very funny. When you start talking about this environment, about teams, you realize they say, oh, it's a group of individuals, we have a team. No, you don't. It's a group of individuals. Now it might stop talking to me. It's much better. So, group of individuals, right? That's one of the things. It's so different from a team, from collective ownership. But when you start implementing Scrum on a group of individuals, guess what you get? Dark Scrum. And it's actually very dark, very ugly. No one likes it. So they say, oh, the Scrum doesn't work for us. We are this, telco. We don't do software or just software. Of course, they were software house internally. They just haven't realized. So eventually, year after year, and that was a really painful journey, we make first teams. Because their first attempt to build a team was actually saying, you have this expert, 5%, we cannot afford to give you more than 5% of this guy. With her, you can get 20%. Yeah, we can afford it. For her, 30%. As you see, you have 60% of this guy. You're really lucky. Guess what happened if you ask those people to come to daily Scrum? They say, well, I didn't have a time to do anything on Scrum, and I'm not doing anything, and yeah, I have no problems with it. Very funny. So when the Scrum Masters called me to this daily Scrum, I was like, well, you need to build a team first. Otherwise, it's not going to work. They're like, but we cannot. We only have 5% of this guy because he's the real expert. So we try to deal with it, start lobbying with their managers and start explaining things, do whatever we can. We ask for, give us anybody. We don't care. We don't need this expert. Keep him. Year? It took us a year. And then we got real improvement. 50% of the random folks from those departments. Every morning they show up in that meeting room, do Scrum, then they went for lunch and do their work for their manager. It improved, yes. But there was a time where my patience was over and I said, like, I can't help you here anymore. I tried, and I have no other ideas how to fix it. And if I would be more patient and wait longer and longer and longer in that pain with them, 3 years after, they got the real Scrum teams. So sometimes all you need is just wait because the organization is not ready for that. And you can also say, if I would have done something differently, it might work. Possible. But I failed in here. I was unable to shift that organization. I was unable to explain. They all say, yes, we understand, but we have a team already. No, you don't. It doesn't work. It's painful for the people. Oh, we have to do Scrum. Scrum doesn't work here, but we have to do it anyway. Ah, so dark. So instead, if you're up for really doing anything, collaboration is what you need. But collaboration needs a couple of things. Trust and openness. So if you don't have a trust in that organization, that you don't really trust each other because of the individual KPIs, goals, set sort of against different people, so they cannot be all successful. Openness was not their strength either, because, you know, if I tell you what I know, you can replace my job. I'm not telling you anything. In diversity, well, not really. One of those things is transparency. Transparency could be really scary. If you open everything up, and we did that on one of our projects, the most demotivated people we ever got. And they were all close to leave the companies, like saying, we are leaving, we don't want to be on this project anymore. What we did, we make a radical transparency. We open everything, the numbers, the decision behind it, the company, expectations, everything. I say, okay, deal with it. Here are the key parameters you need to keep. Come up with a better solution. And actually they did. They shuffled the finances around, rent a car instead of driving their own car, which was crappy, hire a different hotel instead of the old one. And guess what? In a couple months, it was the best project ever. Everybody wanted to work on, just because we organized it differently. It was even more profitable for a company. So transparency, make it available for them to make a decision, because if they don't know, they cannot make any of those decisions. But it's scary. What if they see things? There's another scary thing, failure. I remember I got this slide on a different presentation in a bank. And I was talking about need for experiments. Did we do really need to run experiments? And how do you know that you run an experiment? 8 out of 10 things gonna fail. You should see their faces. They're like, what do you mean fail? Like, you cannot fail. We are a bank here. We are a serious organization. And when I talk with some of them after that, they were saying, well, you know, when you say failure here, you imagine something which is like 5 years running and then it fails, like our bank account stopped working. It's not a failure we are talking here about. It's a small thing. You try to have a board with post-it notes, and then you realize it's not working for you that way, so you change it to something else next day, next week, maximum. There are different organizations. In some organizations, they take a failure as a bad thing, as an opportunity to blame. It's your fault anyway. Everything is your fault. Let's fire him. Yeah. You make a failure. Mistake. Bad. And there are some other organizations where in the same situation, they say, oh, thank you for showing us that we have a problem. We should actually promote this guy because he helped us to improve. Now think about it. Which environment you work on? This one? That one? Yeah, do a reflection, right? And finally, I think the hardest is this one. Because when I started at the outside level with the processes. We implemented Scrum. By the way, dark Scrum anyway, but we tried. And what I learned over the years, you need to start from inside. Thinking about culture. What are the values here? Who are we? What is important here? Do you even know what are the values of your organization? And when you start asking those questions, it's really interesting. Because in some organizations, you got immediate answers. We value openness. And I say, okay, so how does it translate to your daily life? And they give you a story. But in most of the organizations, it's like, what do you mean, values? Huh? You have a KPI here. Work to be done. Very nice. And only once you understand the values you want to create and the culture you want to have, only then we can talk about different structure and maybe different frameworks, Kanban, Scrum, Less. Those are the three I'm usually offering the organizations. But without that value understanding, it's not going to work. So that's the culture, right? Start from the values and build that culture. Team-oriented, collaboration-oriented. Build teams. The second wedge here would be the values-driven. So imagine automotive. In Czech Republic, where I come from, we have a strong automotive industry. Maybe very different from here, at least from what I read about. So you cannot imagine your automotive industry, I'm afraid. But imagine a Czech automotive industry, right? So it's a very project-focused organization with delivery of tasks is the most important thing. Deliver, deliver, deliver. Maximize the velocity. And of course, estimates. Can you tell us how to estimate? Yeah, I guess I can, but does it really matter? Very difficult environment when you start talking about Scrum here and realize there is something called value. Say, what do you mean value? We need to deliver. Where is the requirement? Can you tell us how the requirements are done? And they use different labels for those requirements. I don't even remember. I was like, I don't know what that means, but can you tell me what kind of value you're delivering? Value? Oh, we have requirements. We need to deliver tasks. So if you want to shift in this environment, you start with purpose. Because without it, it will never work. So what kind of car we are building here? What's the most important? Oh, that's not our job. We are here only in this department doing that thing. Very nice. So what kind of car? Oh, it's this brand, right? Better not to name. And when you tell them like, it will never be possible. And they tell them, okay, so look at, for example, Tesla. Joe Justice is in the next room, right? He has good stories. So what about Tesla? Oh, Tesla is not a car. So, okay, well, it's driving, but I'm not the biggest fan of Tesla, but I am quite clearly sure it's possible to do things differently. What kind of car you want to be? Oh, that drives. Okay, well, drives, but what else? The purpose lost in the tons of documentation and the requirements. And then any conversation about the value or about innovations. We can't innovate, we don't have time. We need to deliver. You know, our estimate says it should have been done 6 months ago already. We have no time to think about anything. Plus, we don't know what are we delivering anyway. We just do work. And then the next things came in place. Even if you define some value, how do we prioritize? Because in those organizations, everything needs to be done. So they start generating a lot of ideas, a lot of requirements, as they say. They say, how can we make them faster? Well, there is a magic. In Scrum, we have this role of a product owner, and his favorite word is no. We are not going to do that, right? It's a practice in front of the mirror, saying, no, sorry, we are not going to do that now. Maybe later. And that's very tough. I remember I went to this team, there was a bunch of developers, product owner, and I asked them, okay, so what are you going to do now? And the rest later, or never. And you should see the face of a product owner. He was like, no, everything needs to be done. This is really serious. The car cannot drive without the wheels, you know? Yeah, I know. So can you say no? Or can your product owners say no to a feature? Because otherwise they're just requirements collectors, not the real product owners. And finally, this trying to deliver things in a continuous way. Little here, little there, little here, little there, inspect and adapt, learning from failures, right? It starts connecting. That's another piece. Because at the end of the day, we didn't start at Agile because we knew what needs to be done exactly. If you knew exactly what needs to be done, well, then do it. And don't bother dancing around with experiments. By saying no, because we know those 5 things needs to be done exactly this way. Well, do it, right? That's what the project management is about. The problem is that our nowadays world is more complex than that. And we don't know what needs to be done. So let's acknowledge it. We know what needs to be achieved. That's the value, but we don't know how. And that's scary. And being transparent about that, it's even more scary than being transparent about other things. So we don't know what needs to be done. We just know what needs to be achieved. Very difficult. Third one, customer-centric. Now, if you have the first 2 done correctly, the third one is very simple. But if you don't, well, that's scary as well, because they will come up with so many ideas what you can do. And your backlog, so-called, gonna be growing unlimited way. So the value would be prerequisite, the team culture as well. Imagine this would be a good example of a organization who is doing the body shopping. So they have no sense of value, they just deliver requirements. And they try to protect themselves very often behind the contract. Think, you know, you ask us to do this, so we just deliver it, done. Right? They have detailed requirements, fixed scope, fixed time, fixed money, of course. And proxy product owners because they don't really understand the business. So that's another flavor of a dark Scrum if you try to apply it, right? Delivery mindset again, and no real sense of anything. Now, if you want to go out of it, and by the way, we did. My 10-year experience from the first Scrum and before and after was actually from a company doing outsourcing. I was not part of that company naturally. I just worked for them. And at the beginning, I got exactly this mindset. Give us requirement, we do it. We don't care about your business at all. Actually, we are the vendors. Right? So what we shifted, we actually said, okay, we co-create things. You are part of us. And the big shift was how the customers really treated us. Because in some organization, they treat you as a vendor, so you're not allowed to enter the customer properties. You're the different company. When there is a Christmas party, guess who is invited? Only the employees, not the vendors, right? So we were the exact opposite. When we show up in the US in that company, huge corporation, by the way, then we are like anybody else. I got a card which has an entrance to anywhere else. And then when the Americans, the customers, show up at our Prague facility, small company, by the way, 120 people, our manager of the facility said, no, they are not allowed to get a card. What if they steal something here? Like, what do you mean? We were invited in their facilities like friends, like colleagues, and you're saying We are not allowed to give them a card for the entrance and somebody need to pick them up every day. Like, really? Do you really believe we should work like this? And he was like, yes, because they are this process, right? And we need to be, it was so difficult, but we made it. So we really make them the real partners. We co-create things. We say, okay, so we have these problems. How can we help each other? I remember one of those situations where I was a director of the whole engineering group, and one of my colleagues came back and said, hey, can I take a day off? You know, tomorrow it's going to be sunshine. I want to go on bicycle. It's a replacement for that weekend I was working. I was like, what do you mean working over the weekend? So yeah, they need help, our customers, right? So I helped them over the weekend. It was raining anyway, so I don't mind. So can I take the day off on Wednesday? It's like, yeah, of course you can. But do you know that you could have said no to that request? Yeah, but it was raining. I don't care. They need help, right? So that's the real partnership. We are in it together. We help each other. We support each other. And we have no real problem anymore. It was quite nice because it doesn't feel like vendors and customers. It feels like partners. So again, you might start thinking where you are with your environments, right? Trust, no trust, transparency, no transparency, value, no value, partnership, no partnership. Empathy, a couple times today. So it's not just what you write somewhere. It's actually quite unimportant. It's what you feel. So recently I went to a coaching class as a follow-up on ORSC, which I did a couple years ago. And I realized that it's not just about what is between people, the relationship, but it's also about emotions. Can you feel that? Can you sense it? Can you really have an empathy, how the other people feel around you? Not just your colleagues, but also your customers, your managers, all of them. Heidi was speaking here about lens work, so I don't know, put it there as well. But can you step into the other people's shoes and kind of think, can I see my organization from a CEO perspective? Can I see it from a customer perspective? Can I see it from my colleague perspective? What would they say about it? What would you say if you take that stance? And take it incremental, because customers, no matter what they say, they don't know what they need. They don't know what they need. They try to help you with saying what they want, but it's usually kind of useless. I came to this realization when I was a customer and a product owner at the same time. For internal system of our company, I was using that system for 8 years at that time. Knew like everything about it from a user perspective. I thought I knew a lot about Agile, so I can write a user story for a team. I could actually, they understand it, right? So I wrote a bunch of user stories. And next time the team came back to me, they say, well, you know, we just want to ask you, how many times are you going to use that feature? I was like, once. And they say, we thought it. So how about if we do this instead? I was like, wow, that's cool. So they haven't been in the same position as I was, because I was at that time promoted as an HR director. I have a specific need to compare the salaries of everybody to everybody so we can open it up. And they still can tell me what I need better than I could myself. Yeah, very good experience. So the customers, they don't know what they need. Be incremental, iterative. Try it and see what happens. Because maybe you don't know that either. Maybe you do. Who knows? But try and see what happens. Number 4, adaptive operation. That's my favorite. So imagine a very small organization, service organization. They believe they are agile. But guess what? They still have yearly budgets. And they also have fixed plans, right? Because they need to fix the plans in order to be able to create a yearly budget. And they have defined business cases for a couple of years ahead, not that well defined. One example from that organization, they came up with a experiment, a program they called experiment. They develop it for a year, and then they run it for 3 years with no evaluation and no transparency about how are we going to measure that experiment is successful. It was not, by the way. So in 3 years, they run another refactoring of that experiment. They stop calling it experiment. And they say, now it is the real program. It was even worse than before. Very agile environment. Yeah, agile, right? So that environment is even harder because you think small organization should be easy to fix, right? They are nice people. 45 employees, come on. Young, agile. They use the terminology. Don't take me wrong. They got scrum masters, product owners, but no real understanding. And when you talk to their finance director, he said, yeah, I know, this rolling budget is a thing, but they first need to learn how to do the real budgeting, exactly as I was doing it for 20 years. He was a very experienced guy, no questioning it. But he was actually rejecting any change. We need to do it the same way all around. Very frustrated. I remember I went for a dinner with him one day because at that time my personal kind of change or challenge was to spend time with people who are very far from me. Like naturally, I would go with Alex because he is a friend. We can talk about Agile, right? The whole evening and understand each other. This time I changed and I actually started going with the other people, with this finance director. And I remember we went from that dinner and he said, like, I still don't understand what is this Agile is about. After 2 years of me trying to explain that. And I was like, I'm done. I just gave up. I don't know how to solve it. Like it's, and I still don't know what I should have done differently. He was trying. It was very painful for him because the whole organization was talking about agility and he still didn't really understand how that could possibly work. So now when I work with leaders, I start with this metaphor. I take it from Steve Denning to give him a credit of that metaphor drawing. So the traditional organization is a tanker boat with a captain on the top giving the orders and the others just follow because I'm the smartest and I know what to do. The Agile organization is more different, flotilla of small boats. But there is a risk. If those boats don't have the same purpose, don't understand the value the same way, good luck with that. So that small, tiny organization of 45 people, they didn't understand the purpose the same way. And guess what was even worse? They believed they do understand it. They have a very catchy phrase as their vision. And everybody said, oh, that's who we are. And then guess what happened to those teams who got quite high autonomy because we said we are an agile organization with fixed budget, of course, but agile organization. Every team take that phrase, vision, in their own direction and say, we're gonna do it this way. This is the most important for the entire organization. And the other team, this is the most important for the entire organization. And this is the most important. You see it from the outside. It was visible on a distance. And they were angry on the other teams. They have it wrong. Somebody should tell them that they don't understand it. They are doing harmful things, they did things contradicting to each other. But they were unable to understand. There was like no power to tell them that what they believe is the right thing to be done is actually not. Because they didn't share the same goal, the same purpose, the same world. I think it was even more painful than going to that telco company with those teams, because those teams, they actually know we are traditional, we don't like Scrum, we don't want to be Scrum. Fine. But this organization believe we are Agile. And they were not at all. So surprisingly, that might be even more painful than the real thing. And then, if you have the same goal, the same purpose, you can change the structure and really make it a flotilla of small boats. It's a network of collaborative teams, and it's moving on its own and sort of connected to each other. So what they have from that time, 3 years after, they have this. They became really agile. They don't talk about it that much, surprisingly. You don't hear we are agile organization, but they actually start acting this way. And what was behind that was a long conversation on the purpose. So now they all understand it the same way. And surprisingly, although all those OKRs, which were failing year after year after year, now make sense and are sort of cascading in a meaningful way. It's also about strategy, but the strategy is done in a very different way. Improve, evaluate, act, right? Continuous change. Yeah. So that program was supposed to be an experiment. If it was done correctly, we would know. How do we know that program is successful? For whom it is at the first place at all? What is the value of it? We didn't, right? So we cannot improve it because we didn't know how. So we close our eyes and believe it's going to work magically. It didn't. Budgeting, there is nothing magical about year cycles. Nothing. And I'm not saying that you cannot plan for a year ahead. I do the plan for a year ahead of my business. But I adjust it every quarter, every month, every week, depending on what is going on. To do the same for your organization. So actually, before that shift with that small organization, we got a year budget, and sometimes it was approved in June. It's supposed to be January, right? So we were actually running with no budget for almost half a year because we were unable to agree on it. Now what they have a year ahead finance overview called budget, if you want to, any day of the year, because it's rolling out there. And we know that what's going to happen next month is pretty sure. What's going to happen next year, well, might most likely change. But we still have an idea. We still check if we can afford it. And there's no conversation about it anymore. Catalyst leadership, that's my favorite. So what do you need to be a real leader? Authenticity. You need to be able to say things as they are. And do it that way. So when I started, I said, I want you to make a decision. And then when the stress came, I was like, hey, let's decide. There is a stress, I take it from them and decide. I was not really a good leader at the beginning. But I was lucky enough because I got a feedback from them saying, hey, that's what you did. I was like, wow, what shall I do? I completely failed. So I said, okay, if there is a failure, I need to be the first one who say it loud. So I came back to that team and say, sorry. I said, I will let you to decide, and I didn't. And I apologize. And I'm on that journey together with you. And thank you for telling me. It's difficult for me to change as well. And I guess that moment of being authentic and admit your own mistakes really saved my life in that company. Otherwise, they would kick me out a window in a day or two. Building relationships is another one. It's not about problems. The problems will sort out themselves. But can you build relationship between people? Similar to that, how do I help other people to grow? So being a leader, there's the ultimate one question. How can I help other people to grow? Ultimately, Bill Joyner's leadership journey, right? From expert, I know all the answers. I am the best developer. So I can tell you how. To achiever, I set a goal and you can achieve it your own way, but the goal is set for you. To being a catalyst, where you actually create a space and let people to do their best, support them, help them to be successful. All over, I want you to spend 30 seconds looking on this picture and thinking, where are we? Do we have fixed plans, project focus, delivery mindset? Are we a group of individuals with expert leadership, the red circle? Or do we have opportunity to run experiments? Do we have system focus? Do we have regular feedback and work as a team and have some goals to be achieved? Achiever leaders. Or maybe at some of those segments, you might got catalysts, adaptive strategies, whole product focus, co-creation, and network of collaborative teams. So where are you right now with your organization, with your team? And where you want to be? Because at the end of the day, you are all leaders. You choose your own destiny. And I don't mean managers. Managers are just a position, but you're all leaders. You can make your own decisions. So where you are, where you want to be. And then every time there is a small step possible. So what is the one small step which is possible for you? In a summary, the 3 hashtags: feedback, know where you are, where you like to be. Experiment, there is no one way. Inspect and adapt, figure out your own way. Don't copy paste. And resiliency, become ready to whatever future brings. Having said so, connect with me on LinkedIn. And for the 2 people who are willing to say in one word what they are living with, I have the 2 books here. It's very simple, but you need to read, be able to read in Japanese, sorry. So one is the Great Scrum Master, the other one Agile Leader. So Great Scrum Master first, anyone? What are you living with today?
I will find my one next step.
I hope you enjoyed the book. And then the Agile Leader one, somebody else? Yeah.
英語で、English。アジャイルリーダーシップ、自分のを見つけたいです。
Thank you for translation. Thank you. By the way, I have a box with a couple more books. So if you want one, I'll be sitting in the lobby with, whether the registration was. So come and talk, have a question, and I'll give you the answer and the book if you want to. So thank you very much. I think questions goes outside to the lobby if you want. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Zuziさん、Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。では、この後30分休憩になります。30 minutes for break time。で、5時半からまた次のセッション、ナイトセッションありますので、それまで休憩とさせていただきます。ありがとうございました。